God.
That's just our reference thing.
Blown away by the professionalism.
Colin recorded that, so that was our intro
that was
right
the three
there.
of us messing around.
Yeah, we Willie,
Guitar, Yee-hoo,
bass, and Yee-hoo. Yeah, Yee-hoo. They said, can you do a? We need to find a Dukes of Hazzard Yee-hoo, and I said, say less, my guys. I got this.
He did.
I
have a
went in
video.
there.
He steps into
Yeah,
it.
the video of him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, took a lunge into it.
I did.
Yeah.
I held nothing back on my Yee-hoo on that one.
That's when I heard that from across the room on an iPhone speaker. I thought that was commitment.
Yeah, I really committed to
That
it.
video will.
There was nothing reserved.
Yeah.
But
I went all out.
He takes
nothing understated about
it's
it.
a power
Listen,
stance and a half.
That was a great night. That was the first time I'd ever seen anyone play a tambourine with two pencils, and he played to give us a little
Ingenuity.
Yeah, he thrives in a studio. You know what I was thinking the other day, Willie? So we do this thing at work, like just to help pass the time. Like we'd bring up a dumb subject, and the question was posed the other day of, if you woke up alone and you're the last person on earth, there's no other human being on earth, and it's just you. Like you wake up in the morning in your bed, you go to get up, and it's just you. How long do you make it? And what is your plan?
Until I die.
But how long are you dying?
I don't know.
How long? Do you think you could survive?
Does the internet still work?
No, who's going to maintain it? It's just you, bro. I see. There's caveats and stuff. So we talked about this for like
I thought that's why Elon bought X.
Yeah, we talked about this for 4 hours on how long we would make it being alone. And then a time before that, we talked about if you were stuck in a grocery store and none of the food expired and you had to eat your way out, how long would it take you to eat everything that's in your typical grocery store? Like a typical size Kroger, like how long would it take you to get out of the grocery store? You have to cook everything or eat it all, like whatever it is, all the bags of flour, all the bags of sugar. Like you got to make cakes or make something and get through like all the jars of pickles and ketchup and mustard, all that stuff.
That Kroger chocolate milk will be gone day
Pickles
one.
are gone first.
Pickles are gone first. I like this the famous Dave
like
sweet and spicy pickles.
The tampons are going to take me longer to get through.
There's going to be some spills. Hey, listen, when I was a kid, so I have an older sister and my mom, and mom made me, when I got my driver's license, go to the store and buy pads for one time. And apparently you can get there's varying sizes of these things. I'm not aware of this. I bought the wrong thing, and I was too, and my mom's like, take them back. And I was like, it was embarrassing enough buying them. I'm 16 years old. I'm not taking them back. I got real creative with those, like what I can do to get rid of those things. They're really good at spills. So, anyway, I don't know.
You know how they say some kids were dropped when they were little?
Oh, I
feel like your mom picked you up and just like tossed you against the wall.
She was careless as a mother. I don't know like how I survived childhood. I really don't.
I don't know how you survive like right now, like every day.
I don't see how you function in the mornings.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm great in the mornings. I zippity doo-dah through my day. In the morning.
You chose this forever?
Plenty of bandit.
Now that we're done talking Justin's experience with maxi pads, why don't you introduce our guest there, bud?
Man,
No,
right.
just no.
No, I mean I'll do it. I thought we were having a good conversation here, but it's just me.
Conversation can continue.
Yeah,
no, it's okay.
We can continue having good conversations.
I'm done now with you, Colin. Anyway, so our guest here today for episode 2 of Green Room Confessions on the Road is Dave. Dave, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know your last name. Hagen. Dave Hagen.
What's up?
Dave, where is it that you work? Was it Dark Horse Studios?
Yeah, Dark Horse Recording.
Dark
Horse Institute.
So that might be one of the bigger names in Nashville. Dark Horse, would you say?
Yeah.
We're going to go back in time, but first I just got to know, how'd you get that job?
I asked.
You asked? All right, never mind. All right, so where did this all where did this all begin?
Damn, it's that easy.
Yeah. So the studio's been around for about 30 years.
Yeah, legendary.
In it's growing. It will never stop growing until the owner
Robin
doesn't own
dies.
it anymore. Yeah, the owner is an entrepreneur, and he's very growth minded, and he's not a guy who like built a studio out of just infinite amount of money. He's a
Right.
guy who just kind of had a passion for it. He's excited about projects and growth, and finding new avenues of business and opportunity. And so he's scrapped all along to kind of build this place without infinite money. He wrote a book back in the day called Jump and the Net Will Appear. And that's kind of his mindset is like, well, I'll just start the project and I'll be stuck enough to have to figure out how to finish the project at some point. So I've been, let's see, I moved to Nashville in 2007. It's 2024. So
I can't do math. I went to West Virginia.
17 years.
Whew. 17.
3,
Yeah,
4,
17
years I've been with Dark Horse, so about half of its time. And I went to a 4-year school in Missouri and learned audio engineering, I thought. And then I got to Nashville. I spent a lot of money, 4 years of my life, went through the whole university thing and all the extra everything, which was great. I got married in that time. Then they also had like an unlimited meal plan, which was great, and 4 years to mature, which is I think probably the biggest.
I needed
thing.
more time.
Yeah, me too.
I'm on
And
year 5.
so I knew I needed to get into a music city, so it was kind of L.A., New York, or Nashville. And I'm from rural Missouri.
Oh.
I'm from Roach, Missouri, which had a post office, and that's it. That was the whole thing.
What's the closest, biggest city?
Well, we're right on the Lake of the Ozarks, which is a big area in
Gorgeous.
Missouri. Beautiful. It's
Yeah.
like where the show Ozark was set, except
Yeah.
they didn't film almost any of it there.
No.
They filmed the opening credits there, and everything else was in Atlanta, I think.
Hmm.
But closest is like Springfield and Branson.
Okay.
Missouri.
Yeah. The Gatlinburg of
Yeah.
Missouri.
Oh,
Branson.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And everybody was like, "Oh, you could go work in Branson," and I don't like banjos that much.
No.
So
no, I
let's
don't
go
want
to
you do that.
Nashville.
So yeah, Nashville was kind of an obvious choice. Like it felt like home, but also had opportunity
Yeah.
that I didn't have in Roach, Missouri.
Well, there's also, I don't think people realize that Nashville isn't just country music here in the
No.
recording studios. I don't think people realize that.
And honestly, I have never been a country music person. Like that's not been my identity. I've worked on a lot of country music. I'm happy to listen to country music, but it was not what I grew up listening to. And so I came in listening more to like oldies and Christian music and rock music and I don't know, just everything except country music. And have picked it up along the way.
Right.
I think I got into music kind of through my dad, and then a few local people that were like in bands and had, a sound system or had a home studio of some
Right.
sort. And my dad hooked me up with a stereo and showed me how to wire in a speaker wrong, mind you. But he showed me how to do that. And we just started collecting speakers, and I, throughout my room, had, little plywood boards and cinder blocks mounting like an entire wall full of speakers, all hand wired, and run the cabling under the carpet. And it was just kind of like my nerdy little outlet for creativity, was how I could wire up my room to crank all of the non-existent power out of the stereo receiver, because I wasn't allowed to even turn it up that much. But it was like FM radio, oldies, 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know. I got into all that stuff.
So
Then I
just like tinkering around with it. And
yeah,
just-
tinkering around with it.
Okay.
And I mean, some of those tinkerings involved a hammer, but
I've been
if
there
you've never
before.
smashed a capacitor out of a circuit board with a hammer, like you're just not.
Have you
living.
lived?
Yeah,
You've not lived
it's
life.
good fun. Rip apart an old.
I've not lived, I guess.
I remember taking apart an old radio and old stereo, and like a FM tuner will have this long magnet wrapped in copper. And my dad had explained at some point in an unrelated conversation how electromagnets work, electricity, magnets, cool stuff happens. So I took that magnet wrapped in copper and I twisted the wires up against the power cable from the stereo and just plugged it in and burned a hole in the carpet. Fortunately, the metal pins like melted out of the power cord and it just toasted the wall. And I kind of sat there like, pulled it, threw it away in the trash can.
That's a whole lot worse than my messing up my parents' house stories.
Yeah. I kind of like, brushed away the smoke smell, opened the window for a second.
What happened? I farted and had bad toast. I burned some toast.
Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't have been sitting on the floor.
So
how to play it
Anyway.
with like speakers in your bedroom lead to engineering?
Oh, okay. So
yeah, that's where we're at.
yeah.
Up around.
Life story. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
life story.
Well, I got into music through listening.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed listening. So I was like, well, I should probably play music then. So band is like the outlet you have.
Yeah, I feel like anybody that gets into behind the scenes stuff, whether they're a lighting guy or an engineer or something like that, we're all failed musicians.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Like we just realized real quick that we were better somewhere else.
Yeah, these guitars here are just for show. These are relics. So yeah, I got into band. I played tuba, which honestly I think is another reason why I'm into music, was because it was the most fun thing to play. That, and I did pole vaulting and track, which was great. You just sit on the mat everybody's running like wind sprints, and you're laying out there on the pole vaulting mat waiting for your turn.
I
So-
did shot put, discus, and javelin so I could flirt with the girls on the track team.
I did 100 meters high jump.
I drink
Listen,
beer.
this is America, okay? Use feet, okay?
Anyway, tuba was fun. I could sit in the back of the band room. I could hide behind my tuba and just
Yeah.
make jokes all day. It was great. But I did want a girlfriend, and so I grabbed a guitar, and that totally worked.
It worked.
I picked up an acoustic guitar and borrowed an electric guitar and started learning stuff. And I thought, I'm pretty good at this, which, we may talk about this later, but the Dunning-Kruger effect of this overconfidence of the beginner who thinks, this isn't so hard. This is pretty easy. I think I can do this.
Yeah, I've done that.
I'll probably be famous about this pretty soon. And because I think people will notice how well I'm playing these 4 chords that I've learned so far.
Yeah. This is
Why
definitely
hasn't
gonna be-
Simon
C,
Cowell-
D, and E minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you just wrote a country hit. Thank you.
Fortunately-
And AC/DC.
My mom did not sign me up for The Voice because that was never my talent. But I thought I was pretty good for Roach, Missouri. Like, I was a pretty good guitar player, and I thought I'll probably do this. I joined a band and had fun with that for a while. And
Do you remember the first song you ever learned?
I remember the first part of the first song I ever learned was "Nothing Else Matters."
Okay.
Open
Yeah,
string,
that intro.
Open string,
Yeah,
open
yeah.
String, open string, open string, open string, open string.
Yeah.
Open string, open string, open string. Open string. I played that in the hallway outside of the art department.
Just
quite a while.
hoping a pretty girl would walk by.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Wow, you've got this.
with the guitar case open. You know this song? No? Well, it's a good one. You'll like it
You
later.
see that? Sounds just
When I
like
learned
that.
You
on
might not know it,
albums.
but your kids are going to love this.
All right,
And then
thanks,
there's
Marty.
this part where it goes 7th fret, open, 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 open.
He's got it down. Bring that guitar
Musical
down. That
genius,
day.
man.
She loved it.
Yeah, I didn't know you were gonna get your own acoustic song
Hey,
too.
ironically,
Yeah.
that guitar will actually play it, even though it's got 4 strings on it.
Right. It's all the
It's strings you
right
actually use.
string. It's not-
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not
that
tuned.
sounds good.
Sound fine.
Oh, wait.
If I tune it, there'll only be 3 strings left. That actually was a gift
From Willie Nelson,
from,
it looks like.
from my wife's dad. Before we dated, he was like youth pastor, and he owned the local home studio.
Yeah.
And this is all his fault.
Oh,
If he ever
yeah.
complains about me taking care of my wife, it's on him.
The inlay on that is beautiful, though.
Yeah, it's really
I just
cool.
now noticed the flower on that. That's
Most
beautiful.
of them are still there.
Most of them are still.
Well, maybe not most, but some of them.
Is that a cowboy hat too? Or a hat on the?
I think it's part of a palm tree.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then.
You know, the classic
Yeah,
6th fret palm tree.
yeah. It's on every guitar I've ever owned.
Yeah, it was a yard sale.
It's beautiful though. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need an expensive guitar for it to sound good or look good.
Yeah, it just has. You can't see the strings from way over where that camera is, so it's fine.
Yeah, they don't need to. It's fine.
So anyway, got a guitar. Started meeting other guitar players and realized that okay, maybe I'm not the guitar player that I thought I was, and I'm a person who I want to be really good at what I'm doing, and I was well aware of my limitations, and I was also well aware of the fact that I didn't really want to practice 8 hours a day for 7 or 12 years.
This is
or
why I'm a
whatever.
bass player. Less strings to learn about.
Yeah,
One at a time.
Yep.
least commitment of any musician, but it's fine.
It got me the girl. Okay.
It's just because she didn't know what a guitar was.
Well,
Yeah.
pizza.
She didn't know the difference.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Who's that? Your fiance?
My fiance?
Oh,
Yeah, her.
it worked. 4 strings is enough, I guess.
Yeah. It was enough for Jocko.
4, 4.5, whatever it takes.
Yeah, 3 if you really mess up tuning.
I don't know where we're going.
I don't know.
I don't either.
That's the joy of this.
Anyway.
We can take it to anywhere we want to.
Welcome
just
to
find
Green
it
Room
along the
Confessions.
way.
There was a small local studio and a little home studio that I got to kind of observe and sit in. Friends had bands that were recording at these places, and I thought that's probably the right amount of nerdy for me. I enjoy music and playing music, and I understand it, and I'm a creative in that way, but also I'm a pretty logical brain, academic sort of nerd. So I thought the studio was probably a really good fit for the overlapping interests that I have of the tech side of things and that particular craft, along with making music and enjoying the process and having a sort of fulfilling outlet for creativity and all that stuff. So I knew basically from high school that that was what I wanted to do, and it was either that or pyrotechnics was my other big career choice. And I'm not sure I made the right choice yet, but I thought movie explosives would be pretty fun to do. I guess the question was, how did I end up at Dark Horse?
Yeah. So yeah, how
I
did
went
he asked.
Good
You
job,
can-
Professor.
Okay, here's a good edit point.
Yeah.
So I went to 4 years of college
4 years of college.
and came to Nashville to interview, trying to do an internship somewhere. I hit up everybody on the first 2 pages of Google, set up 5 or 6 interviews, drove to Nashville, spent a weekend, interviewed at Omni and Quad and Blackbird and I can't remember where else. Dark Horse. Dark Horse was kind
Oh
of my
yeah,
last,
that place.
my last stop of the day. And if you've seen the pictures, if you haven't seen the pictures, go look it up. darkhorserecording.com. It's worth it. There's a really cool video that they just put out that shows some of the new stuff, and then they've got some stuff on the old
The
old
cabin
buildings.
out there.
Yeah, there's a new lodging that's pretty insane.
Oh my!
It's-
It is.
Yeah, I got the email about that
Real.
the other day.
Yeah,
Somehow I
is
still get all the
unreal.
emails.
we're never letting you go.
Oh,
Well,
you've got me forever.
That's not how email lists go.
Hey, listen. Did you hear that intro produced by yours truly over there? I'm just saying.
But I failed my test whenever I first walked in.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
we have to fix that later.
yeah. Anyway,
You
so
didn't fail.
I-
You just learned what not to
as
do.
you kind of drive up to Dark Horse, you realize it's a different.
This is not
Oh,
your
it's way
typical
different
studio.
than any
Yes.
other studio.
This
Yeah.
is not.
It's out. It's hidden. It's
Yep.
This is not the kind of concrete box that a lot of the Nashville Music Row studios were.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the classic country old school studio. It's its own thing. It's meant to be a retreat. It's meant to be an experience. And more effort has honestly been put into the experience and the customer feeling, like coming in as an artist and feeling like this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those places that you can drive downtown Nashville and you can go buy Omni or you can go buy Blackbird and stuff like that.
Well, they just tore Omni down.
Oh, did they?
Yep.
Oh,
You've been out of this town
Like
for
a
a
month
minute,
ago.
Colin.
well, it was
For
just
the-
a month ago.
For
But
those who don't
anyways.
know, Colin went to Dark Horse
I did.
Institute, and Dave was his instructor, one of his instructors, I'm assuming, or the instructor.
I can only do so much, guys.
He was the one. Yeah, I was gonna
We
say I
don't-
don't think he wants me on his resume.
We don't blame Dave for Colin,
Yeah,
but he did help shape somewhat of Colin.
he gave me enough tools to get where I'm at.
Yeah.
See
yeah.
what
So
chance.
so
See
when,
how-
when Colin's making references to this, that's why he's
Yeah.
on the email list.
But yeah,
is
like, what
Colin
I was saying
a-
is like if you can drive past those places and see them, but unless you're going to Dark Horse, you'll never know that it's there.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that was really smart of Robin.
For
to do.
those
Yeah.
who don't know that the legend of Dark Horse, and I say legend because if you look at the artist that's recorded there, it's pretty spectacular.
It's pristine.
Can you give some people like who's recorded there? That's it doesn't have to be somebody you've recorded there.
So
but
early on, this was a home studio, and it was like there was a log cabin with a kind of attached home studio. It just happened to be a really cool room, and Robin's kind of design aesthetic made it really cool. But he had Scott Hendricks, who was producer, engineer, writer, head A&R until just recently for Warner Chappell, I think. He was bringing out Faith Hill and Trace Adkins, who's this unknown guy who did okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
and
he's fine.
and he started bringing out these acts, like all these country acts that were just doing really, really well because he wanted a quiet place away from Nashville, its own little retreat. And so in those years, we had a bunch of classic country artists, like most of them have
Yeah.
all come through Dark Horse at some point, and Neil Diamond, and more recently we've had, Carrie Underwood did that big Super Bowl song that she had a couple years back, The Champion. She did that there. We just have had in the last year, Kings of Leon, Jack Harlow, Shawn Mendes, Jill Scott, big R&B singer.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think. Yellow Wolf did that new record. A
Maybe
lot of
this-
people. Jelly Roll has been out.
This little unknown artist who did their debut album there, maybe Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I think some
Um,
people might know who she is.
Is that her name?
I think
Taylor,
so. Taylor
Taylor
Allison.
something.
Allison. I think it's Allison, isn't it?
Something
yeah,
like that.
some I don't know. Allison
Um,
Swift, something like that. I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, she came through. She came through as
learning.
what, 15, 16-year-old.
Yeah, she's just a little thing. yeah.
Nobody knew who she was. Nathan
Mhm.
Chapman, producer. Nobody knew who he was really. I mean, he was a established person in Nashville, but he wasn't like a megastar.
Yeah.
And just working with this young artist and helping build tracks and playing everything and being careful with the budget and all that stuff. And then 6 months later, she's world tour with Tim McGraw and blowing up all over the place.
And now the biggest artist on
And
earth.
she won't stop calling me. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Taylor, if you're listening, leave
He's
Dave alone.
joking. Savannah just lit up like, you have her number? Give me your phone.
Stop. I gotta put this on silent. Sorry, guys.
Oh, gosh. So as a producer, how do you sit down and say, I've done this, I've made albums sound like this. How do we not fall into that inherent role of doing things that we're just programmed to do? How do you sit down and say, I'm going to make this album sound different than something I've ever done before?
If you look at like a famous visual artist like Picasso,
Right.
A Picasso is instantly recognizable, except most of what Picasso did for most of his career was very unrecognizable as a Picasso. It was what everybody else was doing. He was an amazing artist at traditional stuff. He could draw, he could paint, he could do these things that are like photoreal-ish.
Right.
Like that kind of classic thing. He could paint a bowl of fruit. But at a certain point, he started thinking less about what does something look like and started more about what does something feel like. And I think that's kind of where I hope to be headed, is more how do I make music that feels the way I want it to rather than just sounds like the instruments that were played in the studio. and I have to start from a place of how do I make that guitar sound like that guitar? When it plays back out of the speakers, is it going to sound like that, or is it going to sound worse, which would be bad? Maybe it'll sound better, hopefully. But in a lot of cases, when you listen to music right now, sounds are not very literal. You know, you listen to pop music, and that includes country music most of the time.
Yeah.
That guitar isn't really what an electric or acoustic guitar sounds like in the room. Like they're much bigger or much smaller, one way or the other.
Right.
There's not a lot of literal tones translating. No snare drum sounds like every snare drum you hear on the radio.
Yeah.
They can't be that big.
Yeah.
Because we're taking that and we're extending it and we're pushing it as far as it can go. And we're Michael Bay CGI on the snare drum to make it just really awesome, which is great. That doesn't always carry the feeling that you want, and then you end up with people on the other side of the spectrum, like Noah Kahn or something, where it's like the super stripped down Sturgill Simpson. You guys were mentioning him earlier. Listen to some of those records, and it's like, you've got plenty of money to make a record that sounds better than this, but would it feel better than this?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, and that's going to be a guess, a wild guess on the part of the artist and the producer of like what's going to feel really good. And they're going to try stuff, and hopefully they will have good taste, which is how they get in that position. And they will make their own judgment calls about what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and they'll start moving sounds in that direction, following the feeling rather than the tone. And that's tough for me as an audio engineer when I'm producing, is to let go of the tone. I want that guitar to sound pristine and perfect every time.
Right.
But in reality, the thing that's going to make the vocal sound good is to almost always make the guitar sound smaller and worse, and thick and not nuanced. And I'm stealing all of this stuff that the guitar player was putting into their art in favor of whatever makes the song work.
Right.
And that's the vocal typically, and the feel of the track. And so like some people have pushed that in a really cool way, like Dave Cobb and Chris Stapleton. Like they've got this whole sound that's almost like its own little world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when one of those tracks starts playing, oh, I know where I am. I know this world. This is
I'm in Studio A.
Season 3 of Chris Stapleton.
Yeah.
I've got this feeling that I'm now in one of these kind of country soul tracks.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing. And if you were to go make a Chris Stapleton record and I come in with this super pristine bluegrass acoustic guitar sound, it's not going to feel right.
No.
And so that's a big part of my thing as a producer is, what is the feeling I need? And I try to start there. And what's going to get in the way of that? Sometimes that's the song itself or the performances I'm getting.
Right.
Sometimes it's my own engineering and my sounds that I'm getting. These things all get in the way. And I can't remember. I think it was Bob Clearmountain or somebody said mixing is just like sonic whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You're looking for things that don't serve the song, and you just smash them down and get rid of it.
All right, you guys go take a break. I got a lot of questions here. This is my interest. So, would you say I'm so interested right now. Like guitar players, like I can hear Brent Mason play guitar, and I know that's Brent Mason.
Brad Paisley.
I can hear Brad Paisley, and I know that's Brad Paisley. Can you, as an audio engineer, hear somebody and say, I know who engineered? Would you say audio engineers have like a specific sound for themselves?
Some of us do very much have a specific sound. Most of us live in the real world and have to make income doing all sorts of things.
That's fair.
And so, like, next week, I'm maybe starting this massive, like, rap hip-hop project. Maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember what the date. I don't know what today is.
Sunday.
But tomorrow I'm doing a worship thing. Last week I did a bluegrass thing. The project before that was a rock thing. And who knows what I'm going to be doing at any given point. So
you don't get to pick and choose,
especially as a staff engineer at a studio.
Right.
Like I'm working on whatever comes in, so I need to be able to
You got to be pretty adaptable.
Yeah, I have to
Okay.
fit into that environment. Some producers definitely have more of a sound than I do, where I'm just trying to serve the song, and I'll look to someone way beyond me, like Rick Rubin.
God.
You don't know what a Rick Rubin record sounds like, but you know that it's going to feel good.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Um,
He knows nothing, but he just goes by feel. It's like I don't know how to play this. I don't know how
Yeah.
to do this, but he's just like it sounds good. I like that. Let's do that.
yeah,
Let's do that.
and you'll see him on records that sound vastly different.
Yeah.
But they all work, and they all work
Yeah.
specifically for that artist. So that's kind of more my intent, is to know my craft well enough that I can morph into whatever role I need to have, and learn real quick what a bluegrass record is supposed to sound like. And like, okay, I'm gonna do some research here for a couple hours on Google and Spotify, and like playing all sorts of tracks that sound in that world. But then I'm trying to decode personally, like, what does that feel like? You know, what are some of the obvious technical moves, but more importantly, what are the obvious creative moves that they're all kind of making?
So if you do mixing and mastering on the thing, I'm probably going to jump all over because I've got a billion questions in my head about all this, because this is like what I've been geeking out over the last probably month or so, is like sound and audio.
I have
and,
for the last 20-ish years.
gosh,
It's
honey,
okay.
this is going to be
I'm
an
at 9.
expensive episode for
I
myself
met,
and my
like,
hobbies.
4 days ago.
So, would you say that, like, you have a specific reference track when you go to mix something in that genre that's spoke to you, and like a feel or a sound or even a volume level to match that, so you're not producing something that is too low, even just from like a main? Is there one that you use, or like a universal track that you like gravitate to, or is it like something, okay, like you said, okay, I did a rock here and this is the rock album or like song that I want to try to match the
Sure.
volumes to, or the whatever, like, is it?
I have kind of 2 playlists that I reference all the time. One is just to learn the monitoring. Like, the speakers themselves are a big part of all your decision making, because you're reacting to what you're hearing. So if your monitoring in a room is not correct, you're going to react incorrectly, and you're going to make bad decisions. So I start by trying to learn what my speakers sound like in whatever room I'm in, and I have a few songs for that. I do Eric Clapton's Change the World. It's always
that's a
play
great
number
song.
1. Perfect kick drum, but it's got these short, bright, transient percussion instruments. It's got these great hard panned acoustic guitars. They're not fully hard panned, but pretty wide panned. And a vocal that's going to sink into the mix and not really stand out in front. So I know that if I can listen to my monitors and I can kind of pick out those elements. On a lot of monitors, the bright percussion-y things, they don't stand out. They kind of blend into the mix. And so I know, don't try to make my bright sounds stand out. Try to make them blend in. Otherwise, they're going to
Right.
ruin everybody's life when they hear that.
It's going to be
in
like
their
piercing.
headphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I that's the first playlist, is like, learn what the monitors do. I listen to, I don't know, Dua Lipa and Sarah Jaros and all these, like, and Sting and Boz Scaggs, and like just some great sounding tracks that tell me about each part of my speaker system, the low end and the high end. Then I get into like artist specific references, and I have a whole long playlist, and who knows what that's going to be based on
Right,
whatever
just
I'm
on
working
who you have in the studio at the
yeah,
time.
I'll try to spend some time like doing research. I start always with like, well, what do you want to sound like? What's a sound that you really resonate with, or what connects with you? What are you listening to, and what feels good to you? I'll start there, and then I kind of go into my own like translation.
Yeah, I
of
feel like that always gives you a good starting point when somebody comes into the studio, of like, gives you an idea of a direction to go, and then just kind of let creativity take over from there.
Yeah, and the risk of that is they're going to be like, well, I love the vocal sound they got on Adele. And then they come in singing.
You're not Adele.
Singing very different, and I kind of have to like, now like that's the standard.
Sir,
that
you'll
we're-
never sound like Adele.
Yeah, that's the kind of standard we're living up to. And
Listen, I love Adele, and this is the voice that I want to sound like.
so those kind of worry me sometimes,
Oh,
because
God.
I'm like, well, we're gonna go through some mixed versions before you're happy with
gosh.
this.
Yeah.
And
A
you're
lot
gonna,
of scratch vocals.
yeah, you're gonna blame me maybe for the mistakes you're making or the bad tone
Oh,
you've got.
God.
But Generally, I start there, and then I'll kind of build my own little collection of a few, just maybe 2 or 3 tracks that I think I want to aim for those benchmarks you're talking about, like the
Right.
vocal level, the kick, snare, drum level, the kind of, I refer to them as the corner pieces. Like when you
Right.
work on a puzzle, where do you start? You start at the
Yeah,
corner
you
pieces,
got to get your edges first.
then you connect the edges,
Yeah,
then you fill in the middle. And the
right.
corner pieces are almost always going to be the vocal, kick drum, snare drum, bass, one big rhythm instrument, piano or guitar.
Yeah.
Like those are my 5 corner pieces. Wait,
Dave's building pentagons.
it's a complicated puzzle.
You know,
But
that's
those
fine.
are kind of my corner pieces that I'm gonna like. I'll assemble those to match somewhat a reference,
Right.
and then everything else I can throw into the middle, and it doesn't matter. If it feels good, it is good, and I don't have to go to my reference and like, well, what do they do with their third guitar part? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
as long as it's heard and it's not ruining your vocal sound, it's
Right.
not messing up your corner piece instruments, then you're all good.
Yeah, that's not.
I got a question.
Oh, you just
is
say it.
it?
You don't have to ask. You raise your hand or something. There you go. Yes, sir.
So from, like, I'm wanting to start getting to like session work, and like, I have no idea how or what. What are things from your standpoint that, like, when I show up, help you be more efficient, or like things?
What
that-
do you look for in
like?
session
What do
musicians?
you look for in session work? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to word things. That's why I don't talk much. But like, what are things that really help you when I'm prepared? Like,
What's
and
your
ready?
instrument?
Guitar. Well,
Guitar.
Guitar. Yeah.
So,
That's primary one.
Yeah.
um,
Like, what do you expect
Sup-
of me when I show up?
I
What
expect
helps you to be
that I can
very
point
efficient?
an SM57 $100 microphone at it and pull that mic up, and it sounds great,
Okay.
and it fits the song. So that might mean 6 different songs in almost 6 totally different styles, and by the time you play something through this, I hit record, and we're ready to listen and get your headphone level set, it should sound awesome. Like that's the initial expectation for session players. And some people, the players that have been around for a while, they have the advantage of like they were doing sessions in the 90s when everybody was getting double and triple scale as many days a week as they wanted. I mean, they're talking, more than $1,000 a day for these sessions. And so they built up, they'll come in with 3 coffin cases full of guitars and a stack of amps and multiple cabinets, and they're bringing everything into every session, and a pedal board that's a 4x8 sheet of plywood that they're bringing in. And now, but honestly, nowadays a lot of those people are not bringing all that stuff, but they have the advantage of bringing the best of whatever they've got.
You just see more of like quad cortex and helix and stuff like that now.
In certain
is that
genres,
just
in
really
the
for
country
live?
world, it's still almost everybody's playing amps, tube amps.
You're
real-
getting their
the real
Fender clean amp top style. amp.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, matchless style
Okay.
things going in. A little bit of amp drive, mostly pedal stuff. It's pretty clean amp
Just to
setup
push the
and
tubes a little.
and then most of their rest is coming from pedals. But
Yeah.
if you get into like Christian music, worship music, CCM, a lot of those people are playing through a helix or a fractal or whatever.
Yep. Right. Yep.
If you get into metal, same thing. A lot of people playing through a Kemper, fractal, helix,
Right.
or Tonex, or there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
options
yeah.
for that like high gain situation, and a lot of those are actually literally better through the emulation than they are through a cabinet because
Mhm.
you're not.
Give
You're
me
not-
4 metal zone pedals and I'm in there.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if Colin was telling you, but that's my vocal chain.
This is metal zone pedal.
Um,
Yeah, I've heard his mix, so I know.
Yeah.
I-
Tell him everything I know. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is becoming more and more a part of the studio world is this emulation, and more often than ever before. Right now, a band will show up, and a bunch of session players will show up, and the bass player will have preamp, compression, EQ. They'll hand me 2 different cables and say one of these is clean, one of these has got some distortion, and whatever my pedal board stuff is, just record these, and I just patch them straight into Pro Tools, and we're done. Guitar players.
You hear that, Justin?
Listen, I run an Ampeg SGT DI on a B15 flip top setting. I go direct into the board. I have 1176 compressor pedal, and that's my setup, and a tuner. I got the Walrus Audio Canvas tuner. That's my what I do when I am in the studio.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
So that is very much like baseline. Like, I'm not going to hire somebody that doesn't hand me good tones, because why would I? Why would I do that?
Why waste your time?
Yeah,
If there's somebody out there who can hand me good tones, great. And then the thing that gets the actual callback is their vibe in the studio and their parts, and their pocket is a big part of that. Can you play cool parts in time, so I don't have to go fix it? Because my goal is to never do any editing. My reality is that I'm always doing lots of editing.
Yeah, editing sucks.
But with my sort of first call session players, I rarely edit anything except the vocals. Like, I don't edit band stuff much. Maybe a note here or there would be like, oh, this would be better with the slide from take 2 instead of take 3. But my goal is it will all play from the past that we captured and feel right.
Well, I'm never going to Dave's studio. So.
Yeah. But
I ain't getting that call.
You might get kicked out.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I would say I started my career doing band records, like doing rock records with bands. And they're not professional musicians. They are musicians for a profession,
Right.
which is maybe not the same thing.
It's very different.
And
They're what you call entertainers.
Yeah,
that's me.
yeah,
I'm
and
a live musician. I'm
and
not
I love
great in the
band
studio.
stuff. Like, the energy is so much different doing a band record than doing a session player record.
Yeah.
And it's in a really great way. Both of them are great in their own way. But I know that if I'm going into a band record, like, I'm going to capture a DI, so I have the clean version of the electric guitar so that I can time align it. And I'm going to make sure that my drums, I capture some samples from the drummer, because I'm going to need some drum samples to, like, augment their consistency on the snare drum and the kick drum and that sort of thing.
So what I'm getting is this episode is just for me and Willie. Everybody else, just, you know,
Yeah.
if you want to listen to it, you can, but this is really just for me and Willie.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not the green room where people talk about cool stuff.
No.
This is
well,
like
we
front of
nerd-
house
we're-
where people say,
we're nerding out.
What desk you
We're-
running?
you got any Grammys, bro?
Just the one.
You son of a bitch. No.
So I interned at Dark Horse.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I told you, man. Like,
Oh, wait, that's the point of this
wrap
podcast?
around.
Go ahead.
And basically, I had been doing construction to pay my way through college. And Robin, the studio owner at Dark Horse, he's always building and growing and expanding the studio and making it better. And, you know, like, it in the way that every studio owner kind of needs to, which is, like, you know, set it up to a base level where you can make some money off of it and then use that money to reinvest into the studio. And he's been doing that for 30 years. So I came in and I was like, I can do that trim work for you. I can double up this wall. I can do all these other things. And I basically just, like, volunteered my way into a job by being invaluable to him on very much unrelated studio stuff. And at the same time, I was busting my butt in the studio and working really hard, because I went to 4 years of school, spent a lot of money, showed up day one and realized I don't know almost any of this.
Yeah.
I had to beg my way into that internship being like, you know what? I have never worked on that patch bay. I've never worked on a console like that. I've never done Beat Detective. I've never done all these technical things that I needed to be able to do to function at, like, a base level in my industry. And so later, when we did a school, we kind of re-envisioned that education process to include all those things as, like, really what all those embarrassing moments for me when I said, yeah, I don't know how to do that. We made sure that we, like,
Listen.
showed
Yeah,
people
you
how to
guys
do that.
done great, because the first time I ever touched a board was the first day that I walked foot into class.
Nice.
And that was also the first day that I heard of Pro Tools, and now I've done all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went to culinary school, and the first professional kitchen I worked in, I'd been in there for a little bit, and we got a batch of, like, new line cooks to come in that had just graduated from culinary school, and they didn't know how to use the industrial can opener. Not prepared. I was like, how did you not learn how to use a can opener in culinary school?
Well,
Like, are you kidding me?
Here's why, is because most schools teach you what you ask for
Yeah.
instead of what you need.
Yep. Yeah.
If you're going to go work in a kitchen, you don't need to know how to make the world's greatest anything.
You don't.
You
I
need
don't
to know
need
how to work the can opener.
Yeah, I
you
can
need to
tell
know how
you,
to cut vegetables. You need to know how to.
Yeah, I can tell you the entire history of Catherine de Medici and how she set up fancy dining, but I had to learn other things on my own because exactly like schools
Yeah.
don't
So,
teach you this stuff.
A lot of audio schools teach, mixing first or mastering first, and especially online, everybody's teaching these kind of like post-production things. When in reality, like if you want to be a professional audio engineer, what the skills you need is to set up a microphone and it works right away.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to solve a problem when something breaks. You need to be able to edit instruments when they're out of time. Like, there's like these boring things that nobody really wants to do long term.
But
Those are the
But you have
skills.
to.
Those are the
things
skills that get you into the industry, and
Yeah.
and if you're doing them well, they let you work on really big records that you have no business being on as a mixer or as a mastering engineer or as a producer, but you can be involved in some records that are kind of, you're working above your level.
Nice little resume builders.
Yeah. And it's like, you may not be the main guitar player for Sheryl Crow, but you can play utility.
I know I'm not the best musician in the world, but I try to make myself invaluable. Like listen, I'll give you 100% performance. I'll give you gear, and I'll give you other things. It might not play all the notes right live, but you got to make yourself invaluable. Like you were talking about with your studio, like I can fix this. I'll do this. I'll do that. And then along the way, you learn. Like I'll get better at this.
Yeah.
But here, like, just give me this opportunity. And I think some people don't do that. They don't want to do the shit work to get to.
Yeah, I mean,
to have the opportunity to learn how to do the fun stuff.
Right.
And that's something like, listen, I can do this. I can bring the gear and be patient with me. I'll learn the other stuff along the way. And, you got to do the dirty work in everything that you do. And it doesn't matter where you start. I think you have to.
Every bit of that is a job interview.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like music, most people in music are freelance. Whether you're an artist or a producer or an engineer or a session guitar player, you're a freelance. You're a freelance worker, and that means you don't apply for jobs. Really, most of the time. Every now and then you're out fishing, but for the most part, you get jobs based on previous jobs.
Yep.
And someone works with you in any capacity, and they see your enthusiasm, they see your energy, more than even your talent. They see this person loves to work. This person is excited to be there. This person's going to bring the energy of my session up.
Yeah.
Or whatever, my gig. And I would like them to be there. Are they good enough to be there? And if both of those are true, then you get hired.
Yeah,
you get that call.
That's exactly how I got the gig that I'm in now with the guy. I did a fill-in job with him. And
are you sure there just weren't any other options?
No, there were other options. I can guarantee.
No, that's how I got my job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
there's a real distinction with musicians between studio musicians and live musicians.
I'm not a studio guy.
And there is not.
I try, but
there's not any hard wall between the two. There are some people that do both, but there's definitely a distinction in skill set.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That you have to have a certain skill set for live. And that is much less about pocket and perfect tone and more about energy.
Yeah.
And playing parts well. And then in the studio, it's like all this finesse, and who cares if you're interesting while you do it.
Yeah. But you still have to.
The producer kind of does. The producer wants you to be fun.
Good energy.
And
you still have to be
a good attitude.
Yeah, you still have to be a good hang. Like you can't be going there and be an asshole. Even if you're playing everything right, you're probably not going to get a call back.
Unless you're a funny asshole.
Well, that's true. But
then
like if people don't want to be around
that's why we hang out with Justin.
Sometimes I'm funny, but most of the time I just make people uncomfortable. But I've accepted that.
So, I interned for about a year and a half. Worked my way up to sort of a senior status, like top intern after maybe 9 months, something like that, by working really hard. And it was, I think, a big advantage to me that I went to a 4-year school, not because I learned anything about what I was doing, but because I came in with this feeling from day one of like, oh crap, I'm way behind.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what I'm doing in this space. And so I came in with this like, I've got to kick stuff into gear,
Right.
and I'm going to have to work harder than all these other chumps who paid probably a lot more money to go to Full Sail or Belmont or like some of
Right.
these places that legitimately were teaching the material that my school just didn't teach well, at least. And so I showed up with an attitude of, I'm ready to work, and I moved to this town for this, so this is all
Right.
I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I put as many hours in as I could. And, you know, nowadays there's a little bit of a like, yeah, was I being taken advantage of? Sure. I was helping out Dark Horse a lot. But also, like, that's how you get into this
Yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Was I being taken advantage of? Sure. Was I taking advantage of my opportunity? As much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Yeah, you have to.
And
yeah.
so I don't hold any, you know, ill will toward all the work I had to put in to break into this industry, because it's like I chose this knowing that it was a tough and competitive.
Yeah, if it was
industry.
easy, everybody would
Yeah.
do it, and
Yeah.
it's not. It's not as easy as plugging in a microphone and saying, "Okay, there you go, have at
Yeah.
it." Like
But
that's
on the flip side of that, I think that almost anybody with that same attitude can make it work. I don't think this is an industry that gatekeeps based on your ability to get good enough. I think if you put in the work to get good enough, and you put in the work to be in the room, you can make it happen. Like I think
Yeah.
most,
I think
almost
90%
anybody-
of it is like networking and just keeping your reputation and your name good with
Yeah.
people that can give you opportunities more than it is just necessarily your skill set.
I
Yeah.
don't think, like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm kind of new to all this, but like it's kind of like golf. You'll never master it. You can only tame it to an extent. In this, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Try
you-
to hit
you-
fewer trees
There's
every round.
never, there's never any perfection. Like it doesn't exist in
Right.
this field.
Yeah.
You can't get 100% on this because what is that?
Yeah.
No one knows. Like
If you can, at the end of the day, if your artist feels like they were able to be creative, they were able to make something that influences people in the way that they were hoping,
right.
and they were able to do it on budget, which nowadays is a bigger concern than ever,
Yeah.
then you can have a career at this.
So
If one of those things doesn't work, or they feel terrible about it at the end of the day, even if the music was good, then you're not going to keep getting hired.
Yeah.
right.
Unless you've just got 20 Grammys to your name and you're just a guaranteed platinum maker.
Right.
You don't
Which
get to be
there
a
are.
jerk.
Yeah.
And that's part of the best part of this industry is though, like, once you get to start making music, you're only making music with people that really want to be there, that are a good hang, and are also talented.
Yeah.
And it's like, whew, that's the best possible option for making music.
Yeah, definitely. Like studio sessions, they can get very, it's long hours in a confined space, most of the time with strangers.
Collins kicked people
Hey,
out of his studio before.
When vibes are good, that makes the day go smoother. Like, don't come into one being an asshole. Don't come in there like, we're laying down the law. No, let's stay relaxed. Let's try things. Let's keep everything light. Like, I have a kind of a joking rule whenever I'm recording people that, like, my big pet peeve is I hate when people say sorry during a session. Because it's like they just keep saying it. So I say you get either 3 of those and I kick you out, or every time you say it, you have to take a shot. And that's just something to kind of keep it light, keep it funny, like throughout the day, even when times get stressful.
I've taken
of
a lot
like-
of shots.
Both of these guys have, and you don't get a good shot. You
I'm
don't get
overly
4
nice.
roses. So you get like whatever I can concoct.
Oh, it's not.
It's not nice.
It's not a reward.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah,
I would
I mean,
rather
I think
not.
there's studio work is very interpersonal, and so keeping the relationships and the comfort level
Right.
of, especially an artist, a session guitar player, I don't really care about their emotions that much. I expect them, if
Yeah.
I'm paying them, I expect them to come in, and they will. I'm not saying this in a like any sort of commanding way. I'm hiring them because I know that they're going to come in with a good attitude.
Right.
And even if I ask them to do a very specific part that they don't think is great, they're going to nail it for me.
Yeah.
And then it's my fault if the part is dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I don't give them any direction, they're going to give me something great anyway.
Right.
I'm going to say, let's make it feel
Yeah.
upbeat and happy and maybe a little bit of edge. And that's my production for the day. Like they'll still hand me something great. And that's, that's why they got that gig.
One of the guys that brought me up, like really kind of taught me something about music other than reading tabs from guitar tabs or whatever. He was Keith Urban's touring guitar or keyboard player, and I was just amazed by him because he was like a true session guy growing up, and he did some live stuff, but we could say, hey, play this song, but make it sound like I'm in a circus. And he could, you would be like, oh my gosh, I'm transported into a circus. And like, he's like, there people who have that mindset have been like, okay, now take that and then make it sound like I'm in the Bahamas. And then just boom, just do it. I'm just like, my mind does not comprehend that.
Yeah.
I can barely play do the 1 and a 5. And I'm like, okay, you want me to throw in a 3? This ain't happening. You're pushing me, okay?
Yeah.
Let's keep it simple here. But it's like that session musician guys just blow my mind.
The session culture for musicians around Nashville is like unbelievable. We're so efficient, and for your listeners who may not know about this, sessions run in 3-hour blocks. You pay them for the block. It's either, let's say you're doing a master record. I think it's $475 or $500 for a 3-hour window for each musician. If you're doing an independent session, a lot of session players will do like $250 for a 3-hour window, and so you've got to make that worth it for you, because you might be hiring 4 or 5 players all at once to do that session. So you then book a 10 a.m. session. If you've got 1, 2, or 3 songs, that's probably enough time. That 3-hour window, you can do 3 songs in that 3-hour window. Jeez. And they will sound pretty good, like pretty damn good. Very professional, incredible musicianship, good tones. Like if it's going well, that's the expectation, is 3 songs is fine. Major labels are probably going to go do like 1 song in that session. And they're paying double the rate of an independent artist,
right?
Give or take. Then you might also book at 2 o'clock. So they go 10 to 1 and take an hour lunch. Then 2 to 5, take an hour dinner. Go 6 to 9, take an hour break. 10 to 1, maybe. Jeez. And you can book any or all of these sessions. Most people are not going to go past, 9 p.m. Because we're pretty much, most of these people are doing sessions every day, and like they've got families and they've got a life, so they're going to want to do the 10 o'clock and the 2 o'clock, and if they can avoid it, they'll not do the evening session, so they can just be done working at 5 and go home.
Yeah.
But if you do a full day, 3 sessions, great. You can do a whole record in 2 days with the band. I just did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of last week was a full record. I only had the band for Monday and Tuesday, and we did 12 songs. And songs they had never heard before that were demoed and had charts written, but we just, did 2 songs per session, pretty reasonable pace to get as much tracking done as you want. My most I've done is 15 songs in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Tracked, mixed, and mastered.
Holy
in
crap.
2 days.
15?
And it was like 4 or 5 a.m. on the second day when I finished everything, but we had 15 songs recorded before the end of the second session on the first day. So before 5 o'clock, we had 15 songs
That's like,
done.
what, 3 takes a song? Or 2?
Maybe. Often the first take. If it's pretty straightforward, it'd be the first take. And this is kind of going back to your very first question, is how do you make something not sound stale or not the same as everything else? And that sometimes takes some work, because these players are incredible.
Yeah.
And they can work at whatever pace you give them. If you say, we got 10 minutes to cut this song, here's the chart, they will go lay down a part in 10 minutes that sounds good, but it might not be unique. It'll be the one they know they can nail.
Yeah. Cookie cutter.
Yeah, it's the one that they know they can hit every single time,
right,
with no fixes, or maybe 1 fix or something like that. If you really want to find a unique sound and a special sound, you have to give the band time and space to do that,
right,
and you have to give them creative freedom to do that, with some guidance, so they're all
Right.
working on the same page. And that's where I think a good producer shows up, and that they're not so much telling everybody what to play, is that they're sharing a vision. They're like, this is the vibe I'm going for. I want it to feel like this. And then trusting that bass player to write a bass part better than anything the producer could come up with.
Just a 1 in 5, baby.
Trusting the drummer to come up with a drum part better than anything the producer could program at home on Superior
Right.
Drummer. And that's the real benefit, I think, of Nashville, is that if you give them the time, you can come up with stuff. And you can find combinations of players. There's hundreds of incredible drummers in town, hundreds of thousands of incredible guitar players that you can put together in different combinations, and you can kind of build a vibe
Right.
off of your phone contact list. And that's, I think, a biggest part of my production is like building the band. Who do I
Right.
think is going to fit this artist well,
Yeah.
this style well? And then I'll just lean on their creativity to do what they do, because I'm not that good of a bass player or a guitar player.
Me either.
But I know it when I hear it.
Right.
And so I bring those people back,
Right.
especially if I enjoy working with them. If they're friends, and if they reach out to me after a session and say, "Hey, dude, thanks for a great day," I'm like, "Oh, you're cool. I like you."
I'm bringing you beer.
Yeah.
Bring some beer. So when you go to set up a session, so like say an artist has contacted you saying, "Hey, I want to do two tracks. I don't have a band." That falls on you to hire the. They'll say you say, "Hey, I've got X amount of money this to spend on this," or they say, "I got X amount of money," and then you hire the musicians based on their budget.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
It depends. But generally speaking, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So when you
Dark
get
Horse is kind of a destination. And so when
Right.
people are like, "Oh, I want to go do a Nashville record,"
right,
for 15 years they've had this dream to go do a record in Nashville. And then they start Googling, they inevitably filter out to Dark Horse because it's just this own experience.
yeah,
And if
it's
a-
not just another.
if this
studio,
record
yeah.
is as much about the experience as it is about the final product, and I don't mean to undersell our final product, but if you care about the experience, you'll end up at a place like Dark Horse or some really cool vibey studio
right.
where you feel like you can be as creative as you want to be, and give yourself that opportunity.
What's that
So-
studio out? Sorry, what's that studio out in like Washington or Oregon? That's like a barn or something. What is that? It's like but it's just like it's like a one story. It looks like an old barn thing, and it's
Yeah,
just
I don't know.
it's like like everybody who's anybody out like out west has recorded there. Like the Eagles recorded there, Fleetwood Mac recorded there. Like everybody's been, and it's just like if you look at it from the outside, it's like that's just a barn.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, but it's just like it's out in the middle of nowhere, and people just want to go there because it's like just away from things, and they can
Yeah.
be quiet. And it's kind of like the same kind of vibe that I've seen from Dark Horse.
Yeah,
I've never been there, but it's kind of
I
it seems
treat
like it's
my
it.
job is very much to make the sound of it inspiring, because Robin's job has already been to make the feel of it, the
Right.
vibe of the place inspiring. And so that falls on me then to be like the reason they come there the second time.
Yeah.
Right.
After
yeah,
hearing the final product of their record and not being in the studio, like I have to bring them back the second time. Everybody's been out once. Everybody in Nashville has been out once, and I'm trying to get as many of them back
Just come
twice
back
and 3 and 4 times as possible. And that's the goal, is to give them the sound and the feel and the final actual product.
of the reputation that Robin has spent years
Yeah.
building, and then yeah. So you we book with you, saying this is the vibe that I want. You've now got your musicians. Day of, they're showing up there. What are you doing beforehand to get ready for this?
Well, ideally, so I have multiple roles that I might play. I might
Okay.
just be engineer. I might be producing. But if, let's say, you're paying me to produce, and I'm coming in as a producer on this record, my ideal is I'll work with the artist ahead of time on the songs, as much as they are okay with. A lot of the weaknesses of the songwriting or the arrangement of maybe things that work great live but don't work great in the studio, we can kind of iron out. We can simplify some stuff. We can make things more interesting if we have to. But also then we can talk about final product. Like, what do we want this to sound like?
Right.
And how can I guide the band in a way that's productive and quick to communicate an idea? My best case is I'll play him 15 seconds of a song that's got the feel I want, and then I'll shut it off, and then we'll listen to our demo and be like, this is where we're headed.
Right.
I want big rock drums on a country song, or I want whatever. So ideally, we'll spend time doing that. That's not always the case that we get to do that. If I have that time, I will do charts. So we'll use the Nashville number system, which for listeners is like a shorthand of music theory. And it's basically every chord that you're going to play within one key. All the chords
7.
in one song will be 1 through 7.
Yeah.
1, 4, and 5 are always major. 2, 3, and 6 are always minor. 7's diminished, and we don't play that one. We don't even talk about that one.
It's kind of,
and occasionally we'll borrow
it's like
from some other
Voldemort. You don't
key,
mention
yeah.
it. Yeah.
We might play a flat 7 or something else, but
Those darn flat 3s.
But basically, you write out the chart in a way that makes sense rhythmically and gets you the chord progression and leaves most of it up to the imagination of the player. And so the drummer is going to be making notes on their chart of what they want to do. The guitar player will go click on some pedals and start doing
and the
stuff.
reason we do this, we write out the number system charts, is if you get in the studio and the singer's like, nah, this isn't the key for me, you depend on your musicians to know, like, okay, well, we need to change this to a half step down. You're not having to spend more time wasting
You're
time
not transposing
to having to
anything.
transpose.
You're
It's
Yep.
okay, well, I know my scales. I know now this one is now moved down a semitone, and I know exactly where I'm at.
Yep.
So instead of wasting time to write, so I exclusively use the number system in my band. Like, we do not use stuff like, so if you're wanting to learn it,
it's also a great method of like taking every bit of knowledge you have about one song and applying it to every other song that's out there.
Absolutely,
If
yeah.
you're working with letter names or chord shapes on a guitar or fingerings on a trumpet, you're learning rigid structures. And we've got to be Bruce Lee here. Get rid of the rigid structures. Let's free flow.
Yeah,
And the Nashville number system kind of simplifies it down to the core of what music is, which are these relationships between major chords, minor chords.
Yep.
And then we can start on any note we want and have the same feeling, but in a new key that works better for that singer or whatever.
Yeah, it's nice for me to be able to look down at my fretboard on my bass, and I don't see letters anymore, honestly. I see roots, and then I see numbers. So I'll see like the
little
root
structures on
yeah,
the
and then
fretboard.
I know, like, if say I'm in the key of A and I see A, I know there's my 1, and then knowing, where
D
my
and A is 4.
huh? Oh
Good
yeah,
job.
I see my numbers.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Like
My
I
brain.
don't, once I find my root, I don't even see letters anymore.
Yeah.
I
And
view them as numbers.
I've had quite a few times in sessions where I'm like, hey, what key are we in? And the bass player is like, having just crushed it for 4 minutes straight. Like, we're in A.
Yeah, like once
Because they spot that structure and they work off of that.
yeah, and so if you're wanting to get into professional music and like do the studio route, or even
Even local level.
even local, like I mean, we've played all over the South and probably Midwest, and we still that's all you and I use when we go to studios.
That's
and
how I
stuff.
walk you through songs on
Yeah,
stage.
well, that's how
Yeah.
my current music director Blake he runs. he throws numbers to me, and I'm just
I
like,
think-
all right, got it.
I think anybody who's involved in making music should understand at least that
Yeah,
much.
it's
You don't have to be able to play it. Like, I'm never asked to play that 1-4-5, but I am asked often to punch somebody in and re-record, the pass they just recorded on the 3rd 4 chord of the bridge, and I have
Yeah.
to know where that is, and I have to
Yeah.
be able to spot that. and-
yeah.
and
Unless
punch
you're a
it in.
drummer, you should learn it.
Yeah, for any musician or engineer.
I'm just kidding. I love my drummer. I love you, Wes and Blake.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's kind of the Nashville thing, is we're super efficient.
Yeah, that's
And along with that can sometimes be a casualness of like, yeah, we can do this faster and better than everybody else can, which is mostly true. Definitely faster than anywhere else in the world. I don't know of any group of musicians that can do what we can do.
No,
in
the
this
last
town.
session that I was a part of, it took us like 3 hours to do a rough track, pretty much. I don't even think we didn't even get into like the meat and potatoes of the song.
Yeah.
It was a rough track, pretty much.
Um,
it was
but
bad.
along with that is then the challenge of like, how do I make this interesting? How do I make this engaging? And how do I make it stand out for this artist in a crowded marketplace where there's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that sounds like Nashville?
Yeah.
And I need to make this sound a little bit less like Nashville using the advantages and strengths that we have here. So that's a big part of my job.
So when you're in the studio, how much nowadays is more like analog like devices versus plugins? Like if I want to start recording in my studio, is that 1176 universal plugin going to be the same as if I have the analog compressor? How close are we now to like the digital plugins versus the Neve consoles back in the day, or the Neve plugin that I can get on my board? Like,
So for engineers,
yeah,
it's a noticeable difference. For listeners, nobody cares.
Nobody, you're not really going to be able to
No.
tell the difference.
It doesn't matter.
It's like for my
because-
mom, I could play four
So
chords on the guitar and she'd be like,
as
sounds
an
the same."
engineer,
Yeah.
I try to take advantage of the big studio that I work at,
Yeah,
and I will track through all sorts of stuff. And I try to polish my sounds as much as possible in the analog world because I appreciate those differences. But once I go to mixing, I'm in my home studio most of the time, and I'm using all plugins, recreations of the same things that do basically the same job. And the compression and the EQ that they're doing are the same compression and EQ. The subtleties are in the saturation and the little tone distinctions and stuff that
right.
engineers who are aiming for a very high standard appreciate those things. But the listener doesn't. The average listener
Does
doesn't
not paying
doesn't hear
attention.
that, and you can't tell the difference between two different 1176s in the hardware, much less plug-in versus
Right.
some other plug-in or versus the hardware. Like they're all really close. So I don't see that now as something to hold anybody back.
Right.
If you've only got plugins, go make a great record. You can
You
totally
can-
do it with plugins. There's nothing stopping you from making a great record other than your own decision making.
Right.
You don't need massive amounts of gear to do that. I've got an Apollo Twin sitting up here, and like I mix everything I do through that and plugins, and I can take tracks that were recorded in someone's home studio and hand them back something that sounds much better and hopefully bigger and
Right.
carries some emotional thing that wasn't maybe there.
As someone who's wanting to get into like maybe a home studio or that route, what are the like basics of that? I have a deluxe reverb tube, and I don't know if you've heard probably 2 Notes Captor X. So I have one of those. I just need to run it into an audio interface, and then I have a computer. Is that really the basics of
Yeah, I mean, I think
like just bare bones?
the hardest, one of the more important things you can do is get your monitoring pretty good. If you're not hearing well, you will make every decision wrong based on that. It's like if your guitar's out of tune, playing the right chord shape doesn't make any difference.
Oh, okay.
So if your speakers are lying to you about treble or bass or whatever, you're gonna solve problems that don't exist, and you're gonna fix things that aren't problems.
Yeah,
And you're
and
gonna
see,
make, you're gonna make
And you'll
problems.
be like, why doesn't my record sound as good as everybody else's? It's because you
Yeah.
were just making decisions based on a lie.
And see, I'm just looking for just like guitar. Like someone send me a song. It's like, hey, put guitar to this. I send them like a guitar track.
Yeah.
And then,
So if that's all it is,
Yeah.
then get yourself a good set of headphones, and don't worry about monitors at all.
okay.
Like listen to tons and tons of records through those headphones, learn what they sound like, and then do that.
Don't
you know,
get
like
a set
train
of
yourself.
beats.
Yeah, get a good set of
Actual
headphones.
Don't get a
quality
set of
headphones.
beats.
I'm
Yeah.
a big proponent of monitor correction. Some people are not, but like SonarWorks, you can get the headphone version of SonarWorks for fairly cheap, and it'll take your kind of medium expensive studio headphones and turn them into really good flat sounding, so you can trust what you're doing a little bit better. So I don't know, 100, 150 bucks, something like that.
That's not terrible.
Will
yeah.
like triple the quality of your headphones. I don't use them very often, but I have the Audio-Technica M50 headphones, which are maybe 150 bucks at Guitar Center, something like that. that plus SonarWorks makes them sound as good as like a $400 or $500 set of headphones, and better than monitors in most rooms, because I'm not dealing with the acoustics of the space.
Right.
So I think do that first. Get yourself a way to listen carefully, and then later, an SM57 is a great guitar amp mic. And if you pair that with something like a ribbon mic, you can get a cheap Cascade Fathead, or it's not Cascade anymore, but the Fathead ribbon mic. And it's like, those are, $300 total, something like that. And then a good preamp does make a difference. So the interface preamp does make a difference. If you buy a cheap, $200 interface, it's going to sound, everything you do will be diminished to that level. So a good preamp is kind of important.
See, this is where it starts going over my head. I can play, I can make my tone good. Anything other than that, no clue where to even go.
Yeah. So right now, what I would recommend is Tea Garden Audio is a Nashville-based company. They do like custom designs, like boutique stuff. They're not a massive company, but it's all designed by an engineer who's done this for a long time, and he just made stuff he wanted to hear. So they have a thing called a Magic Pre. You get a 2-channel version that sums that down. It's got a summing mixer right into it and records into Pro Tools or whatever you got. Your 2 different microphones, and it's just perfect. And it's it's a bit of an investment compared to like buying a small interface, but then that everything you're handing off, that SM57 through that preamp into whatever you're recording with, is like, that's an all pro signal chain, and so you can trust that that's going to sound good, even if you don't EQ it, even if you don't do anything else. Like the bass
I
line
can
is
send
there.
that to someone who can EQ, and like it'll be quality. Okay.
Yeah, it's like shooting raw with a camera.
Yeah.
If you shoot with a iPhone 6 from a distance and you take a picture, like, you can't hand that to someone and say Photoshop this into a great billboard.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. You got to have a good, clean, accurate capture right off the bat.
A good signal.
And then
basically.
you can put all your Instagram filters on.
Zhuzh it up a little bit later.
Yeah, you zhuzh it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, Willie. You know. So if there was a beginning microphone for recording, maybe not vocals, but like say instruments, and the SM57 is probably going to be your go-to, or
Yeah, I mean,
does
it's
that
not my
change?
favorite mic by any means, but it's probably my most used mic.
It's a $100 microphone, $99. It's hard to.
Yeah, it's a
hard to
great
bu-
electric guitar. I use it on snare drum. I use it on scratch vocals sometimes, but it sometimes just sounds great on a vocal.
I know Cindy
they did
Lauper.
a shootout. They did a AES, the Audio Engineering Society, the nerd meeting.
I
in
need
Nashville.
Give me my membership. I'm
and
down.
they wanted to compare all of the U47, the Neumann U47 models that were out there. So this is the classic tube mic that Frank Sinatra would have sang on, and one of those mics might go for like $20,000-$30,000.
Jeez.
But there's a ton of people now, Warm Audio and all these others, that do like knockoffs and clones and modern recreations of it, and some slightly legal branding iteration on the name and the design. And they'll sell them anywhere from like, $400 up to, $8,000, something like that.
It's like this microphone that I'm using, the Universal Audio SD1. It's got the mic modeling, so after I can go in and change it to different microphones. That it doesn't necessarily sound the same,
but it gives you the impression.
But it gives you a good impression for the general user. Like, it's for me. I bought this because I was like, it's close to an SM7B, just raw audio. It's pretty close. It's cheaper, and it can give me different vibes.
Yeah.
I was like, it might not sound like a RE20 or a EM88. It might not sound like these microphones, but it's going to give me different audio options.
Yeah.
And I think options, especially in this field, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not the professional here, but having different options for different projects can be the game changer. It can spark your creativity or take you in a completely different direction by using a different microphone.
Totally.
Yeah.
So in this U47 shootout they did, the number one, everybody's favorite pick was a vintage U47 tied with a modern recreation of it. The number 3, if I'm remembering right, was an SM57 running the Antares Mic Mod emulation software. Wow. Number 3 over a bunch of other like high-end clones and including over other U47 actual vintage U47s. So I think if you can't make a good record on an SM57, it's not the mic's fault.
No.
It will have a distinct imprint on your thing, but
Right.
nobody's listening to the tone. They're listening to the song.
Right.
And so a little EQ or whatever, you can make something work. So, yeah, I mean, I think whatever you can do to get into this, and then you'll start thinking,
Spending.
well,
You'll
if
be
I only
whoring
bought
yourself
yeah,
out on the
if I
street
only
corner to
bought
buy a
another
microphone. Yeah.
mic, I would make better music.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna buy a
and I think
U87 one day. I
there's
swear.
a lot of people that don't do it.
Don't do it.
There's a lot of people that get into this like, well, the mic will make it feel better.
I know
and
it
really
won't, but it's just like it's like a biggest, competition. Like you want to have. Yeah.
But there's also this thing like, as an engineer and producer who wants to get hired, who's going to hire me? Other people who work in music, they hire based on the way a record sounds, and so there's this kind of thing like, they say women they're not dressing for you, like they're dressing for the other girls that they're going out with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm mixing for other engineers. A lot of what I'm doing is like little nuanced stuff that nobody's going to hear except the people that are sitting in front of very expensive monitors and going like, how does Dave mix?
Right.
And so I'm some of what I'm doing is just for those people so that I get the next gig. Some of it is very much just whatever is instinctive and feels good in the moment.
So I got a question. So
why didn't you teach him to be better? That's what I'm just playing.
He's only as good as the tool that he
didn't
has.
start with much, okay?
Yeah. But no, like, I know you've said we've talked all about your studio journey and everything like that. Did you ever venture out into like live sound or anything like that?
I actually got into a lot of this kind of through live sound. I was running sound at a church.
Oh yeah.
When I was in high school, and then I ran sound at the student union in college. That was one of my jobs in college. I was doing live events there. And a lot of that was like conferences and stand-up comedians and stuff.
Have you ever had anybody that you've like recorded though, like when you get into the bigger acts, be like, hey, you want to come like run front house for me one time?
Not much. I've had maybe two different artists that I've gone and like run sound for, but more has gone the other way where I'm out running sound and I meet people there and be like, oh, you should come hang out in the studio, and I show them a picture of the place where I work and they go, I should go hang out in the studio.
Yeah. So speaking of that, do you have a follow-up? Did I interrupt?
No.
Okay.
Would it have mattered?
Probably not. I probably would have just said it anyway. But so now, like, you're working with people. You're in one of the bigger music scenes. What's the maybe not most popular, but like the funnest artist you've had the opportunity to work with?
I think
if you don't want to name drop, you don't have to.
No, that's fine.
I'm just curious.
I wanted to name drop. Why the hell do you think we had him on here?
I don't know.
So
I'm just trying to be nice, Colin.
One of the things when I like, if you go look up a studio, you Google it. Like, you go look at the pictures first, and then you go look to see who's recorded there.
Right.
So when I did that at Dark Horse, there were a couple of names on the list that were like, oh, cool, so and so's been here. So Victor Wooten was like is a bass player, just crazy.
Yeah, Bela Fleck.
His name was on there, and I was a big Bela Fleck guy in high school.
Me too,
or
yeah.
college. And then Relient K, and they were pop punk band from like back when I was playing pop punk in bands. They were sort of like, oh yeah, maybe we'll make it someday like these guys did. And they were, I think they're 3 years older than me. You got a 1981 sticker on this. That I think that's the year Matt was born. I was born in 1984.
Yeah,
so,
he made me one of his DRVs. Yeah, he the first
I
ever.
keep trying to get one. It's
the
fine.
first ever white with the pink and purple. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I got the first one that he ever did with that color scheme.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so He they were
Sorry
one of those
about that.
bands, and I didn't expect to work with them, but it was like, oh, cool. They did some records that I really enjoyed at this studio, so it was kind of a fun attachment to that. As I'm interning, maybe a year in, I'm sort of like top intern at the place. I've worked my way up in seniority, and I hear that they're going to come in and do keys on one song, or on one little project. So one day, maybe even one evening, at the studio with Relient K and Mark Townsend, the producer, that they've worked with on a bunch of records. And so I just showed up to the front office and I was like, "Hey, put me in, coach. Like, that's my gig." And so I put up, 5 microphones for the piano and the organ, and I sat on the couch the rest of the night and just got to watch like a band that I really looked up to work. And
Did it
and it was
disappoint
cool.
you?
No, it was great. It was
They
subtle.
said-
I mean, it was just like chill.
Right.
And then they left, and I said, "Hey, if you ever need anything, let me know." And of course, they didn't say anything. They were nice, and they left.
Yeah, sometimes, what's the famous saying? Don't ever meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I don't
Good.
run into that all that often.
Yeah, good.
Most of them are pretty cool.
Good.
And then a few months later, that producer came back working with some other band that I hadn't heard of, but seemed fun. And so I was like, "Put me in, coach. Like, I want that gig." So I worked with this other band for like 2 weeks straight. We tracked their whole record. And as the producer was heading out, I was like, "Hey, if you ever need anything, give me a call. Here's my number." And so I get a call a couple days later as I was painting a ceiling in one of the rooms at Dark Horse, and he just said, "Hey, Dave, this is Mark. Do you do drugs?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Okay, you want to help me finish out vocals on this record?" And he's like, "I can't pay you anything, but if you want to come hang out, like you run Pro Tools or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, heck yeah." So I went out, finished that record, ran Pro Tools on everything, tuned some vocals. Fortunately for me, the previous assistant, who was kind of on his way out, kind of messed up some of the tuning. And so we redid it, and the producer was like, "Hey, Dave, can you Melodyne vocals?" Which is how you tune it. It's like auto-tune, but manual. And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Show me how you do it. Let me do it your way." And so I watched him do one vocal, and I kind of made notes, and then I just went off and did it. And I did half the record, and he did the other half. And after that, I basically worked with him full-time for about 2 or 3 years, doing different records, including a couple of full-length Relient K records.
That's awesome.
And those were probably some of the most fun. And I was assistant engineer, assistant producer, running Pro Tools on everything. So I wasn't like claiming ownership over that record or anything.
Yeah.
Just was like in the room,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
hanging out
absolutely.
and not trying to screw it up.
Yeah.
And then those were some of the most fun records because we had the budget and the time to just be creative. And then this last year, Matt called me up and was like, "Hey, we're gonna do a song on the Switchfoot re-release. Would you be willing to like produce on that?" And so I got to co-produce, engineer this thing that just went out on the Switchfoot, beautiful letdown, like 20th anniversary thing, right next to Ryan Tedder and all these
That's
like
awesome.
big names up there. So that's been a fun like full circle thing for me. It was kind of got me into that particular studio. That was my first big shot at that studio, and then I got to come back and like fully produce stuff on a big release for them. So
Yeah,
that's
cool.
They were kind of my a big part of my story, I think.
What's your favorite genre to mix with?
Whatever's different than the last one.
Whatever pays the most, Willie. That's
Or
that's the
that.
right answer.
Yeah, I mean, if it pays enough, I'll do whatever. But no, I love variety.
It's a spice
I'm
of life.
a fan of music in general. There are certain things that I gravitate to, and that's more like real instruments, live drums, live guitars, piano, whatever, live vocals. But if I've done a whole bunch of that stuff and someone brings me an EDM track to mix, like, oh, heck yeah. Like, this will be super fun. Be an interesting exploration of, like, what to do with this sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoy variety. I used to do construction, and it was like, yeah, framing is the most fun because stuff goes up fast and it's productive. But then sometimes it's like, yeah, it's kind of fun to do precise stuff. Like, let's
I'm
do some trim
currently
work.
in construction.
Let me
So-
turn my brain off and do some
Yep.
caulking trim for a day.
Yep. Take a break.
Um,
and he's in construction. We're all
yeah.
construction fillers.
Yeah, no, not me.
You're
I build
constructive.
things.
So
You do
for
all
me,
that.
I'm
it's like
destructive.
some days, like if I'm producing a band, it's like a brain on all day sort of thing. Like I'm engaged, and I'm exhausted, despite sitting in one seat all day.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
very
yeah.
very mentally draining.
And then I take it home, and it's like, why don't I edit these drums and guitars? And it's like, that's a brain off situation, and I can put on a podcast, or I can watch a YouTube video,
Green
or
Room Confessions.
whatever.
I
and
wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, 10
what's
out of
that? I
10
never
would
heard of
not.
it.
Yeah, me either. It's pretty crappy.
But I can kind of shut my brain off and do something different, and so I appreciate those moments. And so if that means jumping from metal to country, great. Why not?
Just keeps you from getting burnt out pretty
Yeah.
much on stuff.
Yeah.
I got you.
Keeps you excited and like
Yeah.
and challenged. Like that's a big part of it. If this was easy, I'd have quit long ago.
Yeah.
But it's so hard that I'm like always chasing success. Like, oh, if I just practice a little more, I'll be good at this finally.
Okay.
And that keeps
Okay.
you going, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have won the Grammy and just been like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Time to move on.
Move on.
I think I'll go home now.
But now I listen
To
to
go
the
out on a
record-
high note, people.
If I listen to the record that I won a Grammy on, I'm like, oh, I could have fixed that. That should be better.
Yeah, I do
Like-
that too. Like which, I mean, everything that I've released is pretty much shit. But that's what I do constantly. Is like I'll never hardly listen to anything that I release to a band just because I've heard it so many times through the recording process and the mixing process and the mastering and everything like that. Like I just hope I never have to hear the song again.
Hey, the
You
Green Room
guys, I'm sure you
Confessions
guys are big
song is
NPR
amazing.
listeners.
Oh yeah.
But
Listen, when I worked on second shift, it was NPR. It was classical hour on my way home.
mhm.
Oh, son of a gun! I'd get home, rub my feet together, do that little number right there. I was out
yeah.
every night. I love NPR.
Ira Glass, who's one of the
Yeah.
recorders, he has this great piece where he talks about your taste exceeding your ability, and I think that's how anybody who's successful in creative fields or even most things, their taste tells them everything that they do should be better. Like they know what good music is, and they know that they can accurately assess their own ability, and that like drives you towards improvement every time. And I mentioned this earlier, but there's the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is like under-talented people who have very little experience tend to overvalue their skill, and they think they're pretty awesome. And there's sort of on the grid of that, we call that Mount Stupid.
Yeah.
It's like you just pick up a guitar, you learn how to play those 4 open strings on Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, and you're like, I'm pretty good at this. I did them in the right order.
I think I'll start a
then-
band with a
and then
name about a creek.
You continue to play guitar for another 20 years, and after 20 years of playing, your confidence has never been lower,
Yeah.
or at least your arrogance generally simmers down, and you're like, I'm good at these things. I know I can do these things, but I know I could be better at these other things. This
Right,
is something
yeah.
that so and so is doing that's better than what I can do, and because you have good taste, you're going to keep improving towards that goal. And I
Yeah,
think-
once I saw Instagram reels and 12-year-olds in there playing bass better than
Yeah.
I could ever dream of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said, man, this is me. This is what I can do.
Yeah.
I know I don't practice anymore.
Or I suppose your taste exceeds your ability, so you quit. Is
Yeah.
another valid option.
Yeah, I quit.
And
I gave up. I
And
just
I
went
did
home.
that on guitar, but I leaned into my thing. I found my thing.
You got to
and
find
I
your
leaned into
passions
that.
and whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Got anything, Willard?
I've actually talked a decent amount.
I know,
You
because
have on
this
this.
is-
I've been the quiet one on this one.
I mean, I
Yeah.
know we've been
Yeah.
going a while, but let me talk about the school for a second.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Shout
No,
out.
no.
So-
So,
Coming out of the studio.
do they
thing,
take scholarships first off? I want to know because I'm broke and a musician. And I want to learn.
We do offer scholarships. If you get on our open houses, they have giveaways on every open house.
Honey,
Um,
come to open house. Shoot.
oh,
My fiance.
so you're Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Dave. That's very sweet of you to say.
Um,
He's a swell
so
guy.
yeah, kind of coming out of the fact that Dark Horse as a studio had been training interns, kind of like myself, for a long time, to come from wherever they came from, which generally was unacceptable amount of knowledge and experience, and then training them up to people that are ready to jump into the industry. We sort of started this school, and Robin just had the vision for it, and it was started as just a simple class out of the studios that we had. And pretty quickly, within a couple of years, we realized we needed to have our own dedicated space, so we're not fighting studio time, making the studio worse as a functioning recording studio, and not really giving people what they're paying for as students. Like, if we can't get into the studio, like, what are we going to work on today? Let's do computer stuff. So we found a space, built into that, built a couple of really cool studios out of that. And we've been running out of that studio for 13 years, I think, 12 years, out of 2 really good studios. We have one with a Trident console and one with an SSL console. And then a couple of rooms for kind of computer lab / project studio spaces where every student can kind of work on their own mixes and stuff like that. I taught the audio program for about 10 years. And including Colin, and
He must be proud.
yeah, and
he probably
worked
just hasn't
worked with
listened.
a lot of people, and we've had a lot of people come through that are just crushing it. And they're out doing stuff. A lot more people that are on their way. They're journeying through the industry and like building their careers.
One of the guys
this
that was
is
in my class. I don't know if you remember him or not. Willie Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's on tour right now with like Jim Messina or Messina and Loggins. I can never.
Oh,
Is it
nice.
Jim or is it Jim Messina? I don't know.
Oh,
He's on tour with him, and he
Uh-huh.
got nominated for a Grammy with, I think maybe with Danny Duncan for some recording
nice.
he done with Mike White or somebody like that.
Cool.
So yeah, there's
Yeah, I
been a
remember
bunch
Willie.
that's come through there.
And you guys were talking about Jody Messina. Elton Charles is drumming with her a lot. He's one of our graduates from early on. But yeah, well, a lot of people out there in the industry, a lot of them have decided to pursue, the artist thing or some parallel path and not fully audio engineering, which is great. Like, that's our goal has always been to be affordable and fast enough that that's not devastating.
right.
If you decide to pivot into the music business side of things or realize that music is just something you want to do but not try to make a living at, you haven't just crushed your chances of doing that by being so expensive, like a 4-year university is for a lot of people. So, yeah, I taught that for 10 years. Now I'm the director of education there, so I kind of guide the future programs. We're adding programs where we now have songwriting, we have music business, and so I kind of work with those instructors and make sure we're all on the same page, teaching the same stuff, and have the resources we need to do that. But it's very much the opposite of every other school that I know of. There are a few other like smaller trade school kind of programs that are doing something very similar, including like Blackbird Academy and some other smaller places. But our goal is basically just be in a studio every day. So the skills you need are the ones you're going to have to use to get your projects recorded. Like if you're going to record something, you need to know how to patch. You need to know how to preamp. Use the preamp, how to whatever. Most of the technical stuff is actually pretty easy. Fundamentally, it's pretty simple.
Well, I'm glad you think so, because I almost
Compared-
cried like 4 times yesterday.
Compared to, I think, the long-term growth in this field is not like after 6 years you don't learn how to turn on a compressor. Like the compression settings, EQ settings, preamp settings, they're all relatively basic. And the long-term growth is in your creativity and in your artistry and your ability to react quickly to problems and that sort of thing. And so, that's not a thing that a school can teach you. That's a thing you have to be out in the real world.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
hands-on
that's one
experience,
thing that the reason that Dark Horse appealed to me so much, and one of the reasons that I went was it's hands-on from day one. Like I said, I mean, you're behind a board the first day doing something every day, whether you're in the computer lab mixing or whether you're doing some sort of tracking or mixing or something like that every day.
Yeah. And that's how we learn. Like if you want to learn French, you go to Paris.
Yeah.
So
That's fair.
we're trying to learn just by creating our own little safe space version of the music industry.
Yeah.
And you go in and you work every day, and it's on the job training.
I'm pretty sure Behringer wrote their instruction manuals in Latin, Pig Latin,
Yeah.
because I almost cried several times trying to get this card uploaded thing.
And we do some live sound. It's not just all studio stuff. We have an X32 that everybody practices on. So
Yeah. Maybe I'll come
If you
down
need
for
the
the
training.
X32 class.
if you need training,
I need
Probably use a
something.
refresher.
I need I need help, but I don't think it's the type of help
glad
that
you
you're
don't.
offering.
I'm glad you don't have super textured leather boots, because like I've been wanting to just scratch on these. This is like white guys with facial hair and hats
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
Caucasians. Yeah, this is what we do. Normally I do, but
It's all right.
I'm a dad. I got to be comfortable. They're not dads yet. They don't know. I chased a toddler around yesterday, so. And we went to
good fun.
Cabela's and looked at the fish.
That's one of the other big challenges of the music industry, though, is family.
You
Music
ain't
industry
kidding.
will eat every bit of success you have is providing for you and you're paying your bills, and also stealing from you
Yeah.
and challenging your personal schedule and your work-life balance. And
Yeah,
it
like-
can be it's a thing that a lot of musicians and anybody in music has to define pretty early on, and I think that's something that needs to be intentional for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
like session players and engineers and whoever else is like day to day on these potentially very long days and blocking out weeks at a time for a tour or for a big session. You have to be very intentional about having time to go
Yep.
throw your back out playing with a kid
Yeah.
and living a little bit of actual life.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that not a lot of us are great at, because we're very focused and like determined
Yeah.
to do this thing and if somebody gives us an opportunity, we're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Because
something
you want to build your reputation. You want to
Yeah.
say, I worked on this project, I did this, and I was able
That's
to
why
do
I worked
that.
the music festival yesterday after knowing that I had to come down here. Is just
Yeah.
because they called me like, hey, we need help.
Yeah. And my advice to people getting into the industry is say yes. Whatever the offer is, say yes. Even if it doesn't pay, even if it's not a
Mhm.
great band you're going to work with, say yes. You'll learn something. You will meet somebody, and you never know what's going to turn into something.
Yeah.
Along
Yeah.
the way, though, you have to make sure you're allowing yourself to have legitimate, actual good priorities, which is family time, your own mental health, your physical and chemical well-being. Like, these are important things that a lot of people kind of put aside because they're like, well, that's all right. I'll stop drinking once I'm successful.
No.
And it's like, no, probably not. or
Probably drink
or
a
I'll
little bit
sleep
more.
more once I'm famous. No, you will sleep
Nope.
less once you're famous.
I don't want to
Um,
be famous. I just
Stuff
want
doesn't
to.
get hard.
No,
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
have to
get
go to
easy.
Toyota.
It's very, it's a tightrope that you walk for time management in it. Because,
Yeah.
like, I know just the small little session that I got more into live sound after I moved back home, just because there's more opportunity for it there where I'm from. I'm from a
Yeah.
small town in Kentucky, but on the rare occasion I do still get studio sessions, and I mean, I've spent 16, 18 hours in there before, and I'm
Right.
sure you've spent the same, if not longer, in them. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not something that you plan. So most of the times, some of the longest sessions I've ever been a part of started out as a 2-hour, let's fix this vocal track and
Yeah.
move on. And then it's like, well, let's fix this guitar while we're already here. And it just snowballs.
Yeah. And I think, when that's the right time to do it, lean into that. Just be like, I'm not leaving until this is perfect.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the next
Yeah.
gig. And hopefully you will speed up along the way.
Yeah.
You will get better at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you coming out and talking with us and
Coming out. He's at his house.
Coming out. Well, he walked from his
Coming out
house
to
to
your
the
garage.
studio. We appreciate you letting us.
Thanks
use
for
this
letting us
space.
intrude on you
Yeah,
today.
and taking
is
up 5, almost 6 hours of your evening, letting us do a couple episodes here. But we're very thankful to have someone like you in our corner, and have someone who's willing to teach us and others about something that we love and we're passionate about, and you're obviously passionate about what you have done, and we're very thankful for that and grateful that there's people out there who want to bring up another generation of people
Yeah.
who want to do this. And that was the whole reason I wanted to do this podcast, was to help people get to where they could leave their bedroom and just go do something they love. Be with friends, be a good person, have fun, play music, and be an artist and do something that you enjoy. And if it's running front of house sound, if it's being a band, if it's being a bar owner or being a GM or bartender, whatever it is that you're doing in this industry, which is, the majority of us work in bars and work in honky tonks or whatever, clubs or whatever you want to call it. And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But whenever you're in those environments, be the best that you can be at that situation. Continue to grow, continue to learn. Don't ever think you know the most in the room at any time. And I think that those are some
You should
good.
seek out moments to be the dumbest person in the room.
Oh, I excel at that. I don't. What are you talking about?
He don't
He
have
wrote
to
the
seek it
book.
out.
He
I
wrote
don't
the
like-
book on that.
Yeah, I'm
You really
pretty good
should
at
try to
that.
find spots where you can learn from people that are way beyond you.
Yeah.
And that means stretching your own abilities. And even if that's just getting in a band with someone who's a better guitar player than you and trying to keep up,
Yeah.
it can't do anything but make you better.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. You should always surround yourself with someone. If you want to be a good, whatever it is, find someone who's better than you, and then find someone who's behind you, and then bring them along with you. If you have that cycle of doing that with people, the whole community of that is going to grow so much exponentially faster.
Yeah.
In everything that you do. And that, I think that is a testament to what Robin has done, what you've done at Dark Horse and the Institute and the school, of bringing a new generation along and saying, hey, we want to invest in this community because we love it. And that just speaks volumes for, I think, who you are as a person and who Robin is as a person, and wanting to do that and give people the best product that we can. Like we talked earlier with Jordan Rager about his journey and him, wanting to provoke emotion in people in their songs, and you guys being good enough to help artists and help people like us in live sound to be able to convey our messages and stuff, and being the best that you can at that. I think it's amazing, and I'm so thankful to be able to sit here and learn, and I have so many more nerdy questions that I'll leave for some other time, but I'm very thankful for you and everything that you've been able to do for us this evening, and especially giving us the space and the power to have here, and the platform that you've given us. I'm so thankful.
I'll send you an invoice for the hourly rate.
Yeah, that's fine.
Studio.
Just send that to
Fiance@gmail.com.
Colin Irvin.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything before we wrap this one up?
No, just
Who's your favorite student, Dave?
His name starts with
I
a.
don't think I've ever liked any of them, so that's hard to say.
No, I know I never made an impression on people. I was the
Carl.
quiet
I remember
kid in
you.
class.
I remember you
Carol.
as the quiet guy.
I was the quiet guy in class.
Carol.
Which
Carol.
was-
Carol. His name was Carol, I think. Carl, maybe? I
But,
don't know.
but yeah, that's complete opposite of how I was in any other school.
You've heard him talk more in this podcast than you have probably in 40 or however long he was there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It was
Probably didn't know he could talk.
He's mute.
No, I knew he could talk.
He's a deaf mute, and he's wanting to get into audio. This is weird.
Can't tell him he
Trailblazer.
sucks.
Yeah. He's the Helen Keller
That's
of
why I
his
don't care about
generation.
criticism.
Oh god.
Your mix sucks, huh?
What?
Cool, man. He goes back playing on
Me
his
too.
phone.
One of my best. I did a full album for a guy, and we had a album release party. Big, the giant speakers in the main studio at Dark Horse. A bunch of people came, food and setup and everything, and a guy came in almost totally deaf. He could barely understand. You had to yell for him to understand you. He had to see your mouth, and he came out afterward and he's like, "Great sounding mixes, man." I was like, "All right, thanks." Appreciate
well,
it.
thank you.
My-
You're going to hell for line.
150 hertz and down must have been all set.
All right. One last question before I go. 44.1 or 48 kilohertz?
48.
48. All right, that's what we're recording in, so I'm glad. Whew,
Yeah.
dodged a bullet there.
Can you tell the difference? No.
No, probably not. But you know.
film stuff's all at 48K, so why go lower?
Yeah, that only applies to half of this when my phone died.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
I do. Everything was going too smooth.
yeah. Well, you know, we'll figure out
I had
something.
a charger right there. Sorry.
Savannah, why didn't you tell me that my phone was going to die?
My fiance failed. Oh my God!
You didn't say it was going to die.
And on that note,
Gonna
we're
have to
gonna
find a
head
new
back to
fiance.
Kentucky, and you go get dinner or whatever it is that you're gonna do, and we'll clean up and we'll see ourselves out. But thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, man.
Nice
See you.
to talk.
See you, everybody.
Have a safe trip.